Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be starting a brand new series on the channel, and this series is going to be about how you can make your apps accessible on the Apple platforms. Now, before we begin, I expect that you know how to build apps using UIKit, SwiftUI, and or AppKit. All right, if you only know how to use one of these technologies, that's fine. But you have to know how to build apps in at least one of them to be able to really fully grasp what we're going to be doing later on in the series. Now, you also need to have at least a little bit of knowledge of testing, primarily UI testing. Now, why UI testing? Well, the reason why we're going to be doing UI testing and why you need to have knowledge of how to do it is so we can use UI tests to perform accessibility audits. We'll talk a little bit more about what accessibility audits are later, but you do need to know exactly how to do it at minimum basic UI tests. All right, so let's get to the topic of today's video, and that is how exactly do we grasp the concept of accessibility? What is accessibility, and really, why should you care, right? Because that's a common question, especially in the world of business, when you propose making sure your app is accessible to maybe your boss or the higher ups at your company or something like that. They're going to ask you, well, why should I care? The app works, so why bother? They're going to say, oh, well, you're just going to waste money. It's too much money or whatever, why should I care? So we're going to go over that in this video. So let's get started with talking about what accessibility is. Well, when we think about accessibility, generally we're going to think, can I access this thing? And there are many contexts for that question, many contexts for accessibility, but the context that we're talking about here is with software accessibility, specifically on Apple's platforms, right? iOS, macOS, watchOS, iPadOS, whatever the case might be. And so, in order to understand accessibility, you also need to understand the various needs for those who have the various kinds of disabilities that you might be familiar with or not so familiar with. So, for example, let's say you're blind or you have some kind of vision impairment that reduces your visual acuity. Well, there are many features that you can use on Apple's devices, such as VoiceOver, which is Apple's built-in screen reader. And screen readers are usually the kind of assistive technology that you immediately think of when you think software accessibility. But that's not all the assistive technologies that are available. VoiceOver is just one among many. There's zoom features. There's the ability to make text larger, specifically dynamic type. There's a way to increase contrast. Dark mode isn't strictly an accessibility feature, but it does help with that contrast for low vision users. So oftentimes people do, in the blind community, refer to dark mode as an accessibility feature. You can make text bold so it stands out more, especially when you're talking about specific situations where the contrast might not be that great in terms of an app's color choice. Stuff like that. Let's say you are colorblind, another type of visual impairment, but it doesn't impair your visual acuity? Well, there's many features such as color filters that allow you to adapt the colors of your screen to whatever color deficiency you might have, which is extraordinarily helpful for those who have some kind of color blindness. Now, later on, we'll talk a little bit more about color choices and color contrast and stuff like that. But just know that there are features to help with some of that. Now, when you're thinking of people with cognitive impairments, maybe they are at risk of seizures, maybe they have dyslexia or something like that, there are features to help with that, including the ability to dim flashing lights in videos. This was a feature introduced in 2023, I believe, so it's relatively new. If you have motor impairments, you can use voice control to be able to control your phone or your Mac or whatever with your voice. There's switch control, so you can use a switch to be able to control your device. If you have speech problems, so you can't speak, or you can speak, but you can only make specific sounds, there are features for that as well. There's head tracking, and coming in iOS 18, there is also eye tracking. So you'll be able to use your eyes to navigate your devices, which specifically on the iPad, which is really, really neat. All of these features exist to help you as a disabled user, or your users, assuming they have some kind of disability, helps them be able to use your app to the greatest extent possible. Now, these accessibility features don't fix every single problem for disabled people, and there are specific things that you have to do manually in your code, and even other things that can't be fixed with specific accessibility features that you have to think about when you are designing your app. For example, color choice. You don't want to communicate things by color alone, especially when you're thinking about those with color blindness. You're going to want more context in terms of, say, symbols or specific shapes to indicate the intent of a button or some kind of warning or something like that. So those are the kinds of design choices that you're going to have to take into consideration when you are either building an app from scratch or when you are modifying an app to improve its accessibility experience. Now, when we're talking about improving the accessibility experience of an existing app, this is what this series kind of focuses on, but you can apply pretty much everything we're going to learn in this series, right, to building an app from scratch. Because I will be talking about kind of the specific design choices that you could make and stuff like that. Now, when we are designing an accessible app or improving the accessibility of an existing app, there is one thing that we need to keep in mind, and that is my app's content poor? P-O-U-R. Now, what does that stand for? Well, poor stands for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Now, let's go over each of those a little bit. First, perceivable is every part of my app that is relevant to the user experience, perceivable by an assistive technology. So our important images labeled with alt text? Do text fields have proper labeling? Are they focusable? Is every user interface component focusable by a screen reader or switch control or voice control even? Stuff like that. Now, operable is connected similar to perceivable in a few ways, but operable means, can I, as a disabled user using assistive technology, operate every feature of the app just like a fully able-bodied person would be able to, right? Can I access everything in the app? And understandable is the content of my app understandable? Right? Do I understand the meaning of, for example, a done button, or do I understand the meaning of a delete button? Do I understand the specific content that I'm looking at on screen in the app? This is where things like don't use just color to convey meaning comes in. You have to be able to your user has to be able to understand what something does without relying on color alone. So keep that in mind. And finally, is it robust? What does this mean? Well, when we think of something being robust in terms of accessibility, we think about it this way. Is your app going to withstand the test of time? Is something going to break super easily with an update? Or is it going to be able to work with assistive technology available on the system to the user? So is it going to work with voice control? Is it going to work with screen readers? Stuff like that. So when you think robust, generally you're going to think, okay, can I use this with every assistive technology? Is this going to withstand? Is this going to be? Is the longevity of this accessibility feature going to last? Things like that. So that really is it for what accessibility is. Now let's talk about why you should care. Now, the reason you should care, right, about accessibility is this. You will get more users of your app. More people will be able to purchase your content, be able to purchase your app. And the profit is nice. It is. But that's not why you should implement accessibility. You should implement accessibility because it's the right thing to do. Everybody has the right to be able to access online content or app content and everything like that. So it should be something in the forefront of every developer and designer's minds. Now, I mentioned in the beginning of this video that your higher-ups, your managers, your team leads, whatever the case might be, might say, oh, well, it's going to cost too much money to do this, or, stuff like that. Well, that's where the profit argument comes in, because when you're talking to management, when you're talking to upper management about implementing accessibility into an existing app or making sure that an app is designed with accessibility in mind, if the management hears they're going to be able to make the company more money by doing it, they're more likely to say, yeah, do it. So that is the only context in which the profit argument really comes into play. Otherwise, really, you should implement accessibility because it's the right thing to do. And not only will it make the experience for your users better, but also making sure everything is accessible also helps your testing, right? Because if your app is fully accessible to assistive technologies, it's also accessible to your UI testing framework. Makes it easier to make quality software that way. So that's why you should care about accessibility. That pretty much does it for this video, guys. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.